This week in Sales Inception, want to focus on prospecting. And odds are, if you hate prospecting and you aren't seeing a lot of success, it's probably something that sucks about your process. And so we're going to dive into how to fix some of the common problems that I see that are made in the industry and really help you dial in your front end prospecting process so that more of your leads feel like they can tell you yes at the end of the day. And so what we're going to cover this week is the steps of sales inception, which is the kick, planting seeds, building the dream, the reality check, and of course the invitation. And typically the kick is probably the most important part of prospecting. These other parts, they're all important. And if you don't get your opener right, that can really sabotage everything in your prospecting process, whether that's on the phone, door to door, in person. You can really screw up your chances by getting the very beginning wrong of your conversation. And typically what I see happen is that most people in sales that are doing prospecting say the same things as everybody else. Now, why is that a problem? Well, the problem is if you look like a salesperson and you sound like a salesperson and you use the same lines that every other salesperson uses, it's going to set alarms off in your prospect's mind. They're going to dig their feet to the ground and they're going to have resistance to you because they think you're trying to sell them something. And so let me give you an example or two of that. And I've talked about this previously on the channel, but it might be, hey, is this John? This is Drew with so-and-so insurance company. The reason I'm calling today is because I wanted to give you a quote on your insurance, right? If everyone sounds like that or uses something similar to that, you're gonna have a really hard time. Hey, if you knock on somebody's door, hey, my name is Drew. I'm with XYZ Solar Company. We're working with a couple of neighbors here on the street and I'm looking for homes that might qualify for our energy program, right? If you're saying lines that everybody else says, it makes it really easy for people to dig in, plant their feet in the ground, and really just tell you no or they're not interested. So this idea of the kick, two parts to it. One, I want to show up free. So it starts with your mindset. We won't cover that a lot today, but I want to show up free from any limitation I have around sales, free from attachments to the results, and I want to make sure the people I'm talking to feel free. So that's part of the kick. The other part of the kick is this idea that we want to kind of shock their system. We want to say something maybe they haven't heard before. We want to break, some call it breaking preoccupation. We want to make sure that when we reach out to somebody, we're using language or we're using questions that is going to spark some curiosity and make them want to listen to us. And so the kick is really about, sending a shock or, using a hook of some sort to really grab somebody's attention. So how could I do that? My favorite way is to use questions, is to ask a question very early on that allows the prospect to say no so they can feel in control at the same time that's something maybe they haven't thought of before. So for example, when I sold solar a lot door to door, I would ask people, hey, are you guys renting here? Everyone asked if they were the homeowner. No one asked if they were renting. They would tell me no. They would usually, almost get defensive, like this is my house, right? Where if I asked, hey, do you own the house? I would have people hesitating to say yes because they didn't know why I was asking. Or it would trigger, that's what all the other salespeople ask, so it kind of triggers some resistance. And so I like to ask if people were renting when I was door knocking. If they told me yes, when I sold solar and some of the other things I did door to door, that usually disqualified them, so it made it quick to move on. Also, it helped lower some of that resistance. Another question I love that kind of piqued their curiosity is with solar, the big pitch is about saving money against the utility rates. So I would often say something like, hey, I don't know if you heard, but so-and-so electric company just approved a 10% increase on the electric rates. Were you guys in support of that increase? And you might thinking like, that's a dumb question. Who would be in support of that? And it gave people that chance to tell me no, and they maybe get asked a question they weren't used to hearing, right? So Maybe if it's on the phones, maybe instead of what I found will work really good is when I was doing insurance calls years ago, I would call instead of saying, "Hey, I'm so and so with the local insurance agency." I would say something more like, "Hi, is this John? Hey, John, this is Drew. How you doing today? Hey, the reason I was calling," and I would still tell them where I was calling from, but instead of leading with my company and sounding really robotic and scripted, "Hey, John, this is Drew. Hey, how's it going?" Right? So a lot of times that makes them think, "Oh, wait, who's Drew? Oh, I should know who this is. Who's calling me? Who's talking to me?" Right? And I'd sometimes have people like get into like a 30, 40 seconds of talking about their day with me before they even realized what I was calling for. And no one was ever mad or upset. Sometimes I'd get somebody like, "Who's this?" Right? And that's going to happen. And what I found is by doing things a little bit different than everybody else was the kick that often got me into great conversations with prospects. Right? And there's some other things you could potentially do as well. It could be talking about the pain that people are in. It could be, talking about an outcome that's pretty incredible. Hey, reason we're stopping by today is because a lot of your neighbors realized they were losing thousands of dollars every year with the electrical program that they're on. Right? That's something a little more interesting, talking about loss than it is to talk about what they might save. Right? And so I look for ways to make that first 15 to 30 seconds as engaging as possible. And look, if you're trying to think of, hey, how can I make my product or service more engaging? You got to ask yourself, what's the solution you're solving? What's the solution you're offering to the problem that you're solving? So look at your sales process. What's the problem they have? And maybe that's what you should be talking about. People don't care about your solution. They care about their problems, right? So if I can speak to their problems, speak to their pain, that's often going to get people engaged with me. And so part of this idea of the kick is showing up free, kind of shocking their system or using some type of hook to engage with them, and really, giving them the feeling of control. And if any of you follow any of my content, you hear me talk about no questions all the time. Conversations don't go anywhere with people till we get that no out of the way. So might as well start the very beginning of the conversation with it. So I love asking a question. Instead of asking, "Hey, do you have a few minutes?" I love to say, "Hey, am I calling you at a bad time?" Because if it's a bad time, they'll simply say yes and tell you when to call back. If it's a good time, if you call and say, "Hey, is this a bad time?" They'll say, "No, it's not a bad time." Right? I love asking questions that just, "Hey, would you be opposed? Would you be against? Would this be a ridiculous idea?" Chris Voss talks a lot about that in his book, Never Split the Difference. Jim Camp, Start With No, a lot of great stuff on that. But I want to give people the feeling of control, because if I do that early in my conversation, it's going to make things go so much smoother along the way. As we go through the rest of the week, we're going to talk about how you can plant some seeds, how you can build the dream, how you can do a reality check with your prospects, and how you can also make it a simple invitation for them to move forward. I'm Drew Norton, the Everyday Sales Leader. This is your daily dose of sales inception.